Nice. So thank everybody for joining. We've got another all-star lineup for our roundtable session today. Just let me make sure. Can you guys see the screen? We're only going to go through a couple slides, but is it coming through? You guys seeing it? Okay, beautiful. We've got, like I said, an all-star cast today for our session. We've got Tati from Boston, and I'll let you guys do a little quick introduction of yourselves. But Mark from Salt Lake City, Zelko from Toronto. So we're really excited to do another session where we're just, you know, I've made it clear, at least I hope so, that we want this to be 100% collaboration. You guys do most of the talking, and let us all learn from you on what's working, what's not. And we'll have some thoughts as we go through, you know, sort of some topics and get the conversation started. But everyone else that is attending, all those that are in attendee mode, we definitely want to encourage collaboration from you guys as well. So if you hear a question being posed or an answer being shared, definitely throw out a question to deep dive it a little bit further through the chat on the side, and we'll make sure one of our moderators or our moderators take care of that and pose the question. So real quick on the housekeeping, again, submit the questions through the chat, and we'll make sure that someone gets that posed to the panelists. And then we definitely welcome, I think we put it last time, we were trying to do Q&A at the end, but it ended up just sort of happening throughout, which I think is even better. So we'll keep that going for our agenda today. So panelists, we'll take a couple minutes just for you guys to just sort of go around the table and talk a little bit about your background and you know, what your role is, and maybe something that you hope to get out of the session today. Ladies first.
Hi, I'm Ita from Boston. I just want to learn a little bit more what the other airports are doing in different areas, not only in the technology side, but on the people side, both employees and passengers, and even or other partners, airlines and cargos, etc.
Awesome. Mark?
Mark Sheminoff from Salt Lake City International. I'm currently the Terminal and Landside Operations Manager. I've been with Salt Lake City for about 17 and a half years and worn many hats in the operations division. And I guess they decided they trusted me enough to steer this boat right now. So here we are. As far as being on the session, I'm grateful to be here, and I like the collaboration and you know, partly finding out that, okay, good, we're in a rational way of thinking, and then you know, we have some things unique to us right now with building a new airport that we're 94 days now from opening, and then adding this extra layer of the weirdness of the world right now to it, and coming up with some really on the fly logistics and differences in how we're doing things.
Awesome, thanks. And Zelko, last but not least.
Hello, everybody. Željko, just call me Z. Don't try to pronounce my name fully. You're gonna actually have problems with your facial muscles after if you do that. So I've been with GTA for close to actually 19 years so far, different roles in IT. Currently, I'm a director of IT for airport development programs, meaning all fancy building developments, new terminal buildings, baggage system improvements, safety and security systems, and all that stuff that goes into the buildings, and any building automation as well. And as you can imagine, now most of these programs have been put on hold. So it's kind of a fun time trying to figure out how to save the money and how to make the best outside of what we already have in place. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And I'm working with the business, with technology providers, with our own internal technology teams. So that's pretty much it.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. And I think it'll be interesting to hear from a Canadian perspective too, see some of the things that they're doing, because obviously their processes and procedures and requirements and compliance and regulations, all these things are a little bit different. So it'll be interesting to hear everybody's perspective on some of these things that we've got going on. So so the agenda, we'll talk a little bit about some of the operational changes and challenges, sort of like what Tati said. We'll talk about building some of the passenger trust, so that we get more and more people back into the terminal. We're starting to see some uptick. Mark mentioned some good results that were happening after Memorial Day weekend. Then I wanted to talk a little bit about how to maximize some of the technology that might be already in place, or testing things that, whether it's COVID related or not, things that are you're excited about, and then definitely some lessons learned, because I think that's one of the consistent things that we need to consider when it comes to things like this, especially COVID related. What can we learn from it? What can we do better? How can we prepare for it? And whether it's technology or processes or just people, or even just things like this, collaborating. So we'll get started. Let me close that down so we can see everybody's pretty faces better as opposed to a screen. And I think
better.
There. So I think what we should start with is sort of what Tati had mentioned. Helping people get back. Let's start first with employees. Everybody is doing the same thing we learned last time. There's hand sanitizer stations everywhere. The plexiglass is going up. Trying to be more upfront in terms of messaging or banners and things like that. But I'm curious to hear from everybody, how we're addressing the concerns that some of the employees and staff are having, right? So some of the airports that we've been talking with recently there's a lot of concern from the actual employees saying, we'd love to come back, but I'm just nervous, right? Coronavirus counts continue to go up. When it's time and it starts building passenger traffic again, we're going to need to come back to work, but how am I going to be safe? So I'm curious to hear from you guys. What are some of the things that you're implementing? Maybe we'll start with you, Mark. What are you doing now with the current terminal, and then maybe some of the preparations that you're doing for the new one?
So for us, that's really kind of, and especially with my work group in operations, it really relevant question and topic that's really kind of what makes my day-to-day life interesting anymore. I had Salt Lake, we're actually doing pretty well. Our numbers are going up, honestly, a lot quicker than I expected, and I think really than anyone expected to happen. Like you mentioned, even with COVID cases on the rise, we're seeing passenger growth every single day almost. I mean, we have a couple slow days during the week, but overall we're ticking up day in and day out. With my work group in particular, they're out there, they're interacting with the public. One thing that we've got going, which is really nice, is our mayor in Salt Lake City is really heavily reliant on the numbers, not the politics of it. And so she's kept us at a level orange as far as the risk level goes. I don't know what other states are doing by way of that, but we have this color coded system. So she's kind of holding us there, and what that's allowed us to do from an operational perspective is that we're only allowing ticketed passengers, or in the instance of a person that needs extra assistance that has like either an ADA issue or an unaccompanied minor, one person's allowed in the terminal with them, and then badged employees only, which is really, really helpful. And I think that's part of what builds our passenger confidence, is that we're not wall to wall with people like we normally would be in the meter greeter areas. I think that's helped a lot. But one of my employees actually brought to me some concern, because right now our only international arrival is from another hotbed currently of coronavirus growth. And this employee wanted me to say, no, okay, we don't have to do that task. And I was like, whoa, hold on. You're an essential person. We don't need to be doing anything right now to make ourselves non-essential, but let's get some better PPE in place for you. So for those folks, we're not mandating it, because once you mandate, you have requirements, fit tests, all that, but we're making available N95 masks, safety glasses, face shields if they want them, gloves. and encouraging them, you know, if you see somebody that is obviously sick, just stay away. But we've done our best we can to give, you know, the people that are interacting with the passengers a lot of high-end PPE to really protect them. And then we have this interesting situation here where we're in the old facility getting ready to move to the new facility, and so we're able to almost run a test and a trial run on some of this stuff that we're thinking about doing, and it's really nice. Kind of nailing design down, nailing down, you know, where to place things. It's actually kind of nice because we do have this test bed almost for you know, where we're at, does it work? What tweaks can we make for where it's new so that it's better? As far as employees go, the majority of employees, a lot of people are working from home right now, but we're starting to look at moving into this new facility where we're going to need a lot of people back. And it's really interesting because a lot of our folks are moving from actual offices to a big cubicle farm. So we've had to go in there and make sure that the wall heights are good, that, you know, from chair to chair is a social distancing standard, as it were. And we actually had some panic over that, but, you know, if we follow the CDC guidelines and we went in there with measuring tapes, you know, the barriers when they're sitting are by far high enough, and then, you know, center a chair to center a chair, even in the closest cubicles, is about 7.5 feet apart. The air exchanges, we've had to, you know, really make sure that our air exchanges are what they are so that we can comfort them that way and say, you know, we're exchanging air at this rate, which is 5 times what you're going to get anywhere else. So we've really had to drill in and take a look at some of those things to encourage their comfort. The other thing, you know, every single employee here got at least 2 masks or face coverings, as long as they can bring their own, as long as it's not, you know, a skull face or something. We're not necessarily allowing that from a professionalism standpoint. But we're being extremely flexible on what they're allowed to use and encouraging the use of it. As a matter of fact, both the mayor of Salt Lake City and our executive director of the airport more or less mandated the use of masks and face coverings, especially in public spaces and within the public view. So that's just kind of some of the stuff that we're looking at. And like I said, it's really nice to have kind of the test bed in the old facility and be able to tweak it going into the new facility so that we have hopefully the best possible scenario for protecting not only our employees, but the traveling public and then tenants, vendors, contractors as well.
Yeah, awesome. So I know the other two, you guys don't really have a test bed, or maybe you set something up. So I will be interested to hear, you know, the same thing. What are you guys doing to help, you know, help the employees and staff feel safe? Maybe Zed?
Okay, let me start. So by the virtue of my job, I'm an IT guy, so basically I'm less involved with the people aspect of all that stuff, but still very aware of the HR policies. So March the 16th, we were all sent home to work from home, meaning that only essential employees were actually at the airport, and even we minimized the presence of the essential employees at the airport property, terminal buildings, and all that stuff. So the airport operations center is still at the airport property. So we did necessary precautionary measures with regards to the security operations, maintenance operations. So the people were actually separated in multiple buildings. All the backup centers are being utilized. That applies for the baggage operation control center, security operation control center, and airport operation control center. So meaning that with regards to physical distancing measures and all that stuff, we did a lot actually to make sure that these employees feel safe and they feel protected with the masks, all the sanitization equipment, and all the other stuff that is necessary in these situations. A lot of communication, of course, from HR, daily announcements on the portals, weekly discussions, director level, monthly town hall meetings, and all that stuff, just to make sure that communication is going on. So at the same time, unlike you guys in States, we had to rely on domestic travel and very few international flights, meaning that we dropped the traffic from roughly 165,000 a day to literally 3 to 5,000 a day. So basically from 165 to 5,000. So 160,000 passengers less a day, meaning that the terminal buildings are still looking like a ghost town. I just came back from T1, and basically I was just texting a colleague of mine. I literally said, like, I've seen four passengers, not 4 airplanes, believe it
Wow.
or not. It's really kind of a strange situation. So, for example, all the common use equipment, like all the CAS and CAPS kiosks at this airport, we operate as the airport authority. We operate those, and we provide all that common use services to all the airlines. We have some measures basically to ensure that units are clean, especially the touch units are clean. We applied hand sanitizers all over the place. We have put some separation measures. So even the very few passengers that are traveling. So for example, every second kiosk is in use. Then going through a security screening process, every second lane is being used. That same applies to the border clearance process as well, to make sure that there is a sufficient amount of separations between the passengers when they're traveling either inbound or outbound. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And again, for last 2 weeks, there was a mandate from the Government of Canada, Transport Canada, and health and safety officials that anybody going through the airports, at least airport employees actually, we have to wear the face masks. And all that stuff is designed again to build and improve feeling of the passengers that they're safe, that they're protected.
Thanks. Thanks.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things we continue to see is decisions being made and sometimes decisions not being made because we're waiting on government decision.
If you don't mind, actually, to that point, waiting for the government decisions, we came up with a number of internal ideas and initiatives actually to do the temperature measurements to actually improve or minimize the risk eventually. But discussing with the government and having actually meaningful sessions with the governments and the airlines, none of these have been implemented so far. And the government is pushing back to the airlines any temperature checks, trusted travel programs, or anything that actually enables minimization of the risk. So it's being pushed to the airlines, and as the airport, we basically facilitated discussions. We made some offers actually to improve and build some technologies and put some solutions into place. But none of these have seen actually any movements forward. We did a pilot test actually with Air Canada only last week, where we actually enabled touchless processing and touchless boarding processing, meaning that a passenger comes with online boarding ticket on the mobile device, and basically without pressing any buttons, touch screens or anything, through the NFC technology or the scan of the barcode, he gets the boarding pass that is printed or actually sent back to the phone, and the bag can be dropped through the SSBD unit. Again, no touch points between the passenger and any of the devices. So that's kind of interesting. But other than that, it's pretty much business as usual from a technology perspective.
Nice. I know there's probably a list of questions that are coming to talk a little bit more about that and pick your brain on that. So when we get to that technology section, we'll definitely have some questions for you, I'm assuming. But Tati, for you and the employees, building that trust back and helping them feel safe, what are you guys doing there in Boston?
So for us, that was very important as well, how we treat our employees. We should treat our passengers and vice versa. There were many things that were done at the beginning and new initiatives that are coming as the state is opening up. And so at the beginning, we set up a PMO, a project management office, that any initiative or anything to do with COVID will go through there. And from there, we'll go to the executive so they can make decisions, which it has truly helped all the different departments to make sure that we're not doing, IT is not doing the same work that, I don't know, strategic planning is doing, and vice versa. There was a lot of research to be done in all technologies and what other airports are doing. So many folks were in conversations like this from the beginning, especially with European and Asian airports, because they had lived it before we were. So we were trying to go in schools with them for both the passengers and the employees. One of the industries that did keep going here in our state of Massachusetts was construction. We had many capital projects construction, so we had to set up a screening site, which is still running, for all the construction workers, in which they will come in at 5 o'clock in the morning. We will check their temperatures, ask the CDC questions, and make sure that they were healthy to go and work. And it also helped us to know who was in the different job sites. So when COVID cases came up on different job sites, we had an idea of who this person was working with and who was in contact. So that was very helpful as well. That was set up very early on this. Authority was not ready to work from home. Within a couple of weeks, we had to transform all these employees to start working from home. So we had to implement go to my PC, go to meetings, go to webinar, the whole suite, and teach employees how to use it and be able to communicate that way. We had, instead of having just essential employees coming, we set up rotations. So each unit will have a rotation. It will have one person of that unit at the office every day. So that way folks felt still connected, still available to come to the office. And the ones who didn't feel they should take that risk because their age or they needed to take care of other folks at home, etc., they did not participate on that rotation. It wasn't a mandatory rotation, but that's how we've been able to keep the numbers of folks at our different buildings, office buildings and administration buildings, tower, etc. And they feel refreshed because they're not coming into the office every day, but at the same time, they feel safe that and engage on the day-to-day. So it has been pretty efficient. And one thing that we're doing now as the state is opening, some mandates from the state itself, is educating those employees that are coming. So we created a course in our learning management. Everybody had to take it. And some of the things that we've done throughout our buildings are we have staff that is going and cleaning all the time. We took chairs out of the conference room so there can't be that many folks on the conference rooms. And depending on the rotation of how many people we were, folks are using other offices. If they were in cubicles that they were next to each other. So for example, the help desk, we had 3-4 people for that. So instead of being in cubicles next to each other, they will jump one cubicle or they will go to a conference room and work from there for that day. So that way we are not close. But the same with you guys, masks when distance is not available. And we did do a lot of cost funding. We went and worked with our partners and asked them to, because we were reducing staff and operations, as they said, you know, we don't have that activity. We don't need that many contractors in our campus. We try to save some money in that. It has been all about saving money because that will save jobs and operations in the long run.
Yeah, no, that's good. I one of the things you said is you had the PMO, the group that was just dealing with everything COVID. I'm not sure if a lot of airports are doing that, but I'm curious to see who's on that team. Like, who made up the team? Where did it come from? Is it, you know, multiple departments trying to collaborate together? How did you guys set that up?
So the PMO was actually an initiative from our capital projects group that they early on approached our CEO. And basically, we have one liaison person of all the departments. And these two persons that are managing the PMO will we would have 3 meetings everybody, and they will bring whatever initiatives we were talking or we needed a decision. They will bring all of them to CEO and executives so they can make a decision in a collaborative way. And it has been all through GoToMeetings and webinars. We have a folder in which each department has written down all the different initiatives that we have been doing, and if we were working with all the departments. So, for example, everybody was sending us new technologies. Oh, look at this camera, and look at this touchless. And so instead of, we sort of got bombarded, right? So we would look at the initiatives, research it, and bring back the information to the PMO and what were the things that we could implement, what we needed money for, or what we needed time. And the PMO folks will guide us on, okay, partner up with this. Did you talk to these people, etc. So it was a very good organization from an administrator area, and we sort of did the same thing for our passengers aviation, or customer service director and a director of aviation sort of have set up the same funneling to work with all the airlines and all the different partners at the terminals. So we mirror those two. Gotcha.
No, that's great. One of the questions that I had, actually, someone reached out and was like, I want to see what people are saying because it's confusing for us. So I wanted to throw this out here on the operational side and maybe a little bit of tech side as well. But with all of the changes that continue to happen in terms of the messaging from government, from, you know, things like the CDC and the WHO, like masks work, they don't work, or you've got local state officials, you know, putting their own pieces in place and saying this is what we're going to mandate. You know, a lot of people are worried about, you know, a consistent message, right? Like, we don't want to go to one airport and they're doing one thing and another airport's doing something completely different. So what's keeping you guys focused on these specific changes when all these messages are going back and forth? How do you stay focused, and how do you determine what makes the most sense? Or like Mark, do you just go with what the mayor says and we're at level orange and we just do whatever she says? Or what else are you guys doing to stay focused on those?
So, you know, for us, it's really been, from my experience, more or less the whole time I've been at Salt Lake City, our focus really has always been on providing a really solid customer experience from the time somebody enters the property till the time the plane's taking off, right? And right now there's these added challenges of how do we help them to feel safe. But so our mission statement kind of guides it all, right? What can we best do to help people have a positive experience at Salt Lake? So this has just added another layer into that. You know, we have all the social distancing reminders. We're trying to kind of follow the CDC recommendations, but from the standpoint that these are recommendations, we're not going to strong arm anybody into mask or staying 6 feet away. And, you know, to me, that's been really interesting because it's almost a day-to-day difference. You know, we've got our dots on the floor in the queuing lines, and they're 6 feet apart front to back, but then they're staggered on the next row, so they're 6 feet diagonally. You know, there was some thought that went into that, but you know, some days you've got a family clumped on a dot, and then another family or a businessman clumped on a dot, and then, you know, the next dot, and everybody's staying there 6 feet away, and they all have a mask on. And then the next day it's utter chaos. Everybody's piled together, no masks. So, you know, we try to remind people, but we're really not, you know, making it a you have to do this kind of thing. So really just trying to focus on that customer, you know, be very customer centric, and then also with our employees, try consistent message there. Sorry, I just had a message pop up, but have our employees be really consistent, you know, with their masks on in public, with being, you know, engaging but not getting right up in people's space, being available and accessible but not over the top right up in people's space, because people are nervous right now, I think. You know, a lot of the other things that have come up, you know, in our concession spaces, we've taken chairs and tables out to try to really encourage this new we get close to each other thing, right? But and again, you know, where we're a department of the city here, we, you know, the mayor is our boss ultimately, and kind of what she says goes. So yeah, right now we listen to what she's saying because we all appreciate that we have a job, I guess. But you know, we're trying to do it from that thought out perspective of how do we continue to make sure that the passenger or our tenant or, you know, vendor contractor, how do we ensure that everybody using the airport is having a positive experience when they're here, and especially given all this weird stuff, how are we ensuring that they feel safe? And, you know, Z and Itati both touched on it with the extra cleaning, the sanitizing that we have our janitorial contractors doing. But it really all just comes back to that, focusing on how do we help these folks have the best experience they can have while they're in the facilities.
See, you guys are lucky. Actually, our government did a lot to discourage any form of travel. So basically, with regards to the messaging, the message from the government of Canada and the government of Ontario was very clear: do not travel, stay at home. And even now, like, we are still in a lockdown in Greater Toronto area. So basically, barely any businesses are still open. We just, Air Canada, which is our biggest customer, they started actually flying domestic lanes kind of last week, June the 1st. But it's still very, very low volume of traffic. We still have a handful of international flights coming in and out. Our passenger levels, I believe, are at 10,000 this morning, which is double the past month average daily, but it's still very, very low compared to anything before that. So now, again, as I said, the government discouraged anybody from flying. Now we are trying to encourage people to come back to the airports and at least fly local or Canadian distances, which, I mean, we'll see how it's going to evolve. We still don't have a clear picture. The messages are so dynamic. Whatever comes from the internet, IATA or ACI or Government of Canada, other airlines, it's very dynamic, it's very fluid. And the only thing that we managed to do from airport perspective, again, the message at the airport, it's very consistent and it's very straightforward, which is keep the distance, wear the mask, and do everything possible to protect yourself and others.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you too, Tati.
Yeah, we rely on the communication directly from our federal or state. Whatever they say, that's what we go for. The governor of Massachusetts here has been very clear on the phases of reopening, how many personnel can be in each of the buildings. We have not gotten mandatory masks. If the distance, if you cannot have the distance, then it's suggested to wear a mask. especially in public. We don't have a way to make passengers, have that mandatory. Some airlines have, and the airlines are the ones who basically, if you don't have a mask, you don't go into the flight. But even them, the message is not consistent. So we just follow whatever our governor or federal guidelines have been. And yes, they have changed day to day, but we just adjust to it and keep going.
So being flexible, nimble and flexible, even as we're massive organizations moving hundreds of thousands of people all the time. One of the things you talked about just now is the collaboration with airlines, and I'm curious from everybody the work that you're doing in terms of collaboration with the airlines as well as TSA, because you're right, like a lot of the messaging has been flip-flopped or it's not been consistent across the board. Maybe we start with the TSA side of things, and what type of collaboration is being done today with them? Are they coming to the forefront saying, hey, there's some technology that we might consider, or what are you hearing from TSA, from the security checkpoint, where we know is one of the biggest bottlenecks, where we're going to have a ton of people all at one time, especially when it starts picking back up? What do you think, Z? I guess you guys are CATSA
yep.
instead of TSA.
We don't have a TSA. That's what I wanted to say. We have CATSA. So funny enough, actually, we have consolidated a couple of security checkpoints again to realize some savings. And talking to CATSA, actually, we made some proposals to do some passenger temperature checks and all that stuff. However, CATSA actually declined, and we are still not doing any. So basically, there are daily discussions with CATSA. Last time I spoke with them, which was probably like 2 weeks ago, or my team spoke with them actually, is that they were saying that they will be doing the scanning with regards to the passenger temperature checks. And to that point, they made a recommendation that the airport does its own for the non-passenger employee access to the terminal building, which we are actually doing a simple prototype right now with a simple thermal imaging camera that is integrated with our credential management system issued by the government, so-called Drake, where basically major challenge was actually compliance with all the privacy laws and making sure that if there is somebody detected with a temperature reading that are actually insinuating that person may have COVID, not to create a kind of a steer and wave effect that person would be singled out, and everybody would know that this is the person that has COVID. So we are doing a kind of a trial at this particular moment, applying the camera at one of our non-passenger screening points, where there is a message being issued actually to a CATSA officer that sits close by, and the CATSA officer will have a discretionary right actually to pull the person in and out in such a way that it does not intrude with appropriate privacy laws. So I'm not sure if I answered your question, but that's very kind of like a minimal implementation of a technology with regards to temperature reads and temperature checks.
That's great. Again, once we're done with here, I know there's going to be tech questions that we're going to want to pick your brain on.
I mean, while on the topic, talking about safety and security, which was actually 10 years of my life here at the airport from integration perspective. Funny enough, we were looking into different options, maybe close one terminal building, move all the airlines to the other building, and one of the cost-saving measures was actually, all the technology, shut it down, and it's going to save money. But at the end, in discussion with safety and security department, the reality is, meaning when there are no people on site, no airport officials at site, the scrutiny on the airport security is even higher, so we have to rely more on technology. So all of our security doors, all of our cameras are still being monitored. Everything is up and running, and basically only now we heavily rely on availability of technology to manage the airport remotely, essentially. So. And an interesting story. An interesting story, just for sake of discussion. While going through all this work from home and being sent home, actually not to be present at the office, we managed to do actually testing and commissioning of the baggage system activation in Terminal 1. Actually, we had a major project which was supposed to replace 7 legacy baggage software solutions and have a single one that's going to operate both terminal buildings. And we did complete testing and commissioning everything remotely while working from home, strictly by using technology tools, work from home, like Microsoft Teams, for example, as a tool to organize people on the meetings, do the remote stuff, and basically I was quite surprised that everything went smooth with all the communication, all the meetings, all the collaboration happening in a virtual world. So that's an interesting story.
Yeah, sounds like you need to be doing a commercial for Microsoft Teams.
Honestly, as much as I'm, I would say, a hater of Microsoft in this particular case, I love it. Like, it really did work great. Yep.
That's awesome. No, thanks for sharing. What about Mark? What's some of the collaboration that you guys are doing with TSA? What you're hearing from them? Are they giving any guidance or?
It's kind of for the States, we know that within the last month or so, there was like this hot topic discussion of we're going to do temperature screenings and TSA is going to do it. And TSA pretty much across the board unanimously, except for headquarters, was like, we're not doing that. We don't have the people. No, we're not healthcare, professionals. So, and I think that's very common for all of us, at least here in the States, is that they didn't want anything to do with it for the most part. But, as far as things they're implementing, for us here, they've kind of staggered their staff. They're doing a week on, a week off because they can right now. Their staffing levels are being very closely coordinated and monitored with, passenger loads that they're getting from their SF data. They've gotten it right most of the time. There have been a few days where it's been like, can we get some more people here, please? But our uptick in passengers and their coordination with us, we're in pretty close contact with them, pretty close coordination, and we have a really cooperative relationship with them here. So it's been pretty good. We had our sign shop make the plexiglass service screens for them for the TDC locations, and then they're trying to keep, if they have multiple checkpoints open or multiple lanes open in one checkpoint, whether it's a Terminal 1 or Terminal 2 right now, they're trying to stagger those. And we've just been kind of coordinating it and making sure that it works for us, works for them, works for the airlines to get passengers through when they're showing up, because we're still having, with the bank system, we're still having spikes at certain times and a ghost town at other times, even though overall our numbers are coming up. The old traditional time of day spikes in passenger numbers still exist, and so we're just coordinating those numbers with the staffing and trying to keep it flowing so that nobody's on top of each other for too long.
No, thanks. And I think that's one of the struggles that we see is like one person will say, oh yeah, we're going to do this, and then another group is saying, no, we're not going to do that. So what about like at Boston? What are you guys doing in terms of collaboration with the specific airlines, right? Like Mark, he loves his Delta because it's a big Delta spot, right? But I'm curious for you guys, like you'd mentioned that even the messaging from the airlines is different, right? Maybe you wear a mask, it's mandatory, you don't. So like what are you guys doing to help make that message consistent, or collaborating with them just so that there is some positive message to put out there so that passengers, again, or they have the desire to come back,
So every day we have a meeting that is open to all the airlines and all our security partners, TSA and CBP, in which basically everybody gives an update of where they are and what they're doing. We've been doing this since September 11th. So that meeting has truly helped facilitate some of the conversations. TSA from the beginning said, well, we need to know how many passengers are going to be in your flights every day so we can staff or checkpoints as needed. So the airlines, the local agents work with the local TSA, sending that information to them. I don't know how that works, if it's an email, if it's a call, but they basically say, you know, so roughly TSA knows how many passengers are going to go for different checkpoints and different terminals, and so they can staff. And very similar with CBP. At the beginning of COVID, Logan was determined to be one of those airports that I think there were like 13 or 15 airports in the U.S. that will take or will continue to take international flights. So for the CDC, we had to create an office and area for them to check any passengers that may think or had a temperature, and they will say that, and CDC will take care of that. So that daily meeting has helped folks, you know, say what they're doing or what they're planning to do, what their headquarters is thinking, etc. From the technology side, in partnership with TSA, we ask them to test ultraviolet light to put on the bins. We have the bins process in which you grab a bin, you put your stuff, and then you go through TSA. So we're working with TSA and with our TSA bin tracking system. I don't recall the technical name, to see if we can use violet light. So that's one of the initiatives that we've worked with TSA. And as far as our relationship with CBP, the same. We had to move some kiosks and things in that area to accommodate the social distancing. And as Mark, we've done, you know, the different stickers and the plexiglass and all that stuff for them as well. But again, all that has been coordinated through the Director of Customer Service and Director of Aviation, who work closely with all our partners.
Awesome. You know, hearing things like ultraviolet lights and all these like technology is really exciting. But I think from what we learned last time is nobody wants to do the knee-jerk reaction, right? Like, we don't want to just go spend a bunch of money just for the sake of spending money. However, I am curious on everybody, especially like Z on the touchless and Tati on the ultraviolet stuff. Like, what are you seeing in terms of technology that will likely stay? Like the plexiglass we can pull down in 6-12 months if it doesn't need to be there anymore. Though we can pull up the stickers, right? We don't need those anymore if that's the case. But like, what technology you guys seeing, or, you know, from these PMO groups and this other, you know, evaluation process, what technology do you see that you're going to implement or maybe even test that will likely stay, right? That it's not just a knee-jerk reaction, it's something that will actually bring value long-term from what we've learned from this whole COVID process. Maybe Mark?
So yeah, I'll kind of just jump in and say, you know, we actually, Delta here already has kind of a touchless, depending on which flight you're going on, what gate it's going out of. You can check in with your face. You don't even have to do you check, you go through security, look at the machine, you get the gate, you look at the machine, you're done. Don't touch anything, show your face, that's your ID, that's your boarding pass, that's your everything. It was more on the international departures out here, but they are now, so I think that's going to stick around. That's something they've been pushing for a while anyway. They've got it in Atlanta. I don't know if you have it in Boston, but that's something that they were pushing before all this started and happened. So I think we're going to see broader use of that, at least with Delta here, and then whether the others follow suit, I don't know. It seems like in Salt Lake, that's kind of what always happens. You know, you get Delta decides something, and then everybody else finds a way to. That we have in our new facility, we have the latest, greatest automated screening lane equipment that we bought and gave to the TSA. Not that that's something that anybody just heard me say, but we're working with the manufacturer to look at the UV light, or even possibly a misting system of a sanitizing agent. The problem is, with UV light, it has to be a certain wavelength and a certain time of exposure. And is there enough time as the bin runs under that, through the conveyor system under that UV light? Is it getting enough? And then if we spray stuff, what's the dwell time? So there's a lot of stuff that we're looking at and working with the manufacturer of the equipment itself. And I think that that's something that even after COVID could stay. But to your point, it's a knee-jerk reaction right now. It's super expensive, and so we're really, really evaluating that before we pull the trigger. Because obviously an industry problem right now is revenues. Nobody's making a lot of money right now, so it's hard to justify spending a lot of money, even if it's there by way of, we have some money. Obviously, we took some CARES Act money, so there's some money to do some things, but we want to be really careful with how we're utilizing that. Sure that not only is it not a knee-jerk reaction, but that it is something that provides that value moving forward. Some of the other things that we're doing that will stick around, we've got our janitorial contractor Flagship is using a pretty simple system, but it's really effective with rags that are soaked in quart, which is a cleaner slash sanitizer on the handrails of all of our moving walkways and escalators. And they put these pads in the liquid, and then they put them around forms that go on each handrail. Just let them run on that for I think it's 15 to 20 minutes while the handrail just cycles through it. The equipment can still be used. It cleans, sanitizes, and conditions the equipment. So whether we continue to use the quart after the kind of threat of this is over, we'll definitely continue using that system. And that was actually, relatively speaking, that was pretty inexpensive. And it's like 99.9% effective at killing and sanitizing. So, the getting rid of germs. So I think we'll see that stick around. That's actually made people feel really good. We've had passengers comment on it. Wow, this is really great that you're doing this and it's visible. We can see that you care, that you're cleaning. Some of the extra cleaning measures and things like that aren't costing us a bunch, I think we'll see stick around long after this. Some of the technology things, we're evaluating it. But like I said, I think we'll see the facial recognition for check-in to bag drop to security to boarding. I think we'll see that stick around because that was a push before this started anyway. And then some of the other things, it remains to be seen whether we pull the trigger on them and decide to spend the money or not.
Yeah. See?
I pretty much agree with Mark. It's the same story here. Again, our capital budget has been slashed, and looking into what needs to be done right now, the only thing that I believe is going to stay for a long period of time, and actually it's going to get more of it, it's actually touchless passenger processing. I call it essentially a non-intrusive passenger processing, where eventually passenger will create its own virtual ID even before coming to the airport and carrying that virtual ID until the passenger is boarding the plane, and that virtual ID is going to be passed as a token to another destination airport. So I believe the ACI and IATA will actually continue pushing the airports for a collaboration in the future, and that exchange of the tokens through variety of technologies will be a kind of a buzz thing in years to come. And currently the airport, again, two different processes. One is the airline process, which is actually everything done by the airline from the check-in to the boarding onto the gate. We started negotiating with Air Canada and I believe, not sure if it was Delta or US Airways, to do the trial for the virtual ID on the basis of the biometrics, but this thing did not move yet. And I believe that that's the one that's going to start moving very fast shortly. And with regards to the government and creating a government virtual ID, that's a longer, it's on a longer stick, and it's going to take a time to get government to move towards that direction. Yeah.
Yep. That always takes longer when the government's involved,
Yep.
right?
Yeah,
U.S.
the
airports know all about that.
Yeah. Same here, no different.
Yeah, that's right. At Boston, were there any? You mentioned the UV stuff. Are you seeing any of this technology you guys are getting bombarded with? Are you seeing like, oh, this one would be great as a knee jerk, or this one's good for long term?
So yeah, the UV light, we'll see first if TSA is kosher with it, and then we'll figure it out the actual investment. Some of the things that I think it will continue is we've tried to digitalize as much as we can as far as all the brochures on the info booth. Boston is very tourist, so people will come and grab all these brochures. So we digitalize them all and put them on our website and put QR codes where people can just take them with them. And also, we are working with the airlines to figure out if there's a platform of communication in which we can put a message that goes to their passengers. For example, Delta wanted to know where all the hand sanitizers were throughout all the terminals. So we put them in our directory and we're passing that information to them. What's the same icon that we're using, trying to have the same icon throughout all the different airports. It's little things, but it helps the passengers on their journey. And we're looking or studying if we could do voice recognition information, use an Alexa or a Google command to get the information the passengers used to touch in our digital signs. You know, what are the restaurants near gate X, or what's the flight status? We're trying to leverage the apps that are on people's phones. Logan doesn't have an app. We have a responsive website, but the more information we can pass to our airlines or use apps that folks have already on their phone, we're going to try to leverage that. One thing that United is doing is trying to do that touchless of passengers use their app. They can print things with just sending the command from their phone. I think more airlines like Delta will continue to do that. And if we get funding, probably go a little bit more biometric, but that's years for now, at least I think for Boston. It's a huge investment. We did 3 biometric exits gates last year, and the financial investment it's pretty big. Yeah. So I think that's going to be a way for us.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So we've come right up against the time. I do want to ask one last question of everybody, though. One of my favorite things that we took away from the last session was what Todd had mentioned was an educated passenger is a happy passenger. Yeah. So I'm curious to hear from you guys if there's like a one-line lessons learned, you know, just as simple as that, like what he said, an educated passenger is a happy passenger. What's something that you've learned from this that can be an easy share with other people just like that? What do you think, Mark? Put you first.
One line, that's tough. But we are getting as much information out on the website as possible. And then when something changes drastically, which, you know, every 5 minutes anyway, we're trying to do press releases so that the information gets out there prior to people being at the airport. And we do have pretty good cooperation with our airlines here, trying to put out any information that we feel is very relevant, you know, during the ticketing process, or if not, at least during the check-in process, so that nobody's caught off guard.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the education is huge, especially right now. So we can try to be as consistent as possible, but at least relay the message so that people are prepared and know what to expect. Tati, what do you think? Lessons learned, key takeaway, stamp of approval from Boston.
I think it's for us, it's been open, courage communication, where we're taking ideas wherever they're coming from and trying them out and working it out, putting positions, titles, egos away, and just trying to do what's best for the passenger. So collaboration and open and courage communication.
Nice, I like it. All right, Z, last one.
So the last one, actually, to make it as short as possible, transparency and collaboration again. Being transparent with the airlines, being transparent with employees and passengers. That's the only way how to conduct the business these days.
Yep.
We're all in this together.
Yep, agreed. Everyone said early on that it was fairly cliche, but it definitely is true in this situation. So thank you guys so much. We appreciate you taking some time out of your busy schedules to participate in this. We learned a lot. We'll hopefully be able to share this with a bunch of others and continue to learn from you guys and others in this industry. But thank you all for attending, and have a great day, great weekend, and hopefully we'll get some more passengers in your airport so we can start getting you some money so you can get those biometrics. Start spending
Thank you, Jared.
Yeah,
thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you guys. Thanks, Jared, for facilitating this. Bye, guys.
Absolutely. Thanks. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.